Greetings, Mandatory79 here, and I'm back with another deck profile video for the Cardfight Vanguard trading card game. In today's video, the deck profile I'm going to be doing one for is Premium Formats, Kageros, Dragonic Overlord the Cross, and Dragonic Overlord the End. Alright then, let's get started. Alrighty then, first let's start off with the main deck. For the main deck we have the starting unit, Grade 0, Lizard Soldier Conroe. The Grade 0, Lizard Soldier Conroe. In my opinion, he's the best starting unit for the Kagero clans, G standard and premium formats. For his skills are, the first skill, Forerunner. When ridden on top of, you can move Conroe from your soul to the rear guard. Forerunners are mainly used to have possibly a 5,000 power boost in the back row, or to have access to the starting unit's rear guard skill for later. And then the second skill of Lizard Soldier Conroe, the best one by my opinion, as a rear guard, by counterblasting one and retreating Conroe from your own rear guard, you can search your deck for any grade 1 or less Kagero unit and add it to your hand. Ideally, this skill is used to add either a perfect guard, heal trigger for generation guard cost, or any grade 1 or less unit that's mainly used for your deck's main strategies, ideally offensive or defensively. So like I said before, he's, by my opinion, the best starting unit for the Kagero clan's premium format and even G format. And with that, we've just about covered the starting unit. So next, let's go to the Grade 1 lineup. And now, the Grade 1 lineup. For the Grade 1s in this deck, we have 3 Lizard General Conroes, 4 Calamity Tower Wyverns, the V format, 2 Doombringer High Flames, and 4 Twin Buckler Dragons. The Grade 1, Lizard General Conroe, one of the best Overlord support cards in the G format and still usable for premium formats. His skills are, the first skill, when called onto the rear guard circle, by choosing to reveal a grade 3 in your hand, you can search your deck for any grade 3 with the name Overlord and add it to your hand. If this first skill is used, you must then discard 1 card from your hand as cost. So for this first skill, it's mainly used to secure yourself a specific Dragonic Overlord you want to either ride as your grade 3 or to use as stride cost or any other hand discard cost you wish to use later in the game. Then the second skill of Lizard General Conroe, the best one, by my opinion again. In the rear guard, by choosing to retreat Conroe from your rear guard, you can give your Vanguard Overlord a skill. The skill is, whenever your Vanguard Overlord attacks, you can countercharge 2. So this second skill is a good way to refund your previously paid counterblast and have face-up damage in your damage zone ready to pay for, well, other counterblasts you wish to use for later. The Grade 1, Calamity Tower Wyvern, V format. His skill is, as a rear guard, by choosing to Soul Blast 1 and retreating Calamity Tower from your own rear guard, you can give your Vanguard plus 15,000 power. One of the best Kagero units to use in the V standard format and still great in the premium format, despite having only 7,000 power, which is slightly less than the average power grade 1s have in the V standard format. His skill more or less makes up for it, seeing as it's a very simple yet very powerful skill to use if your main strategy is to attack mainly with your Vanguard, which is great since Overlords are mainly about like that. And so with that, next we go to The Great One, Doombringer High Flame. His skills are, the first skill, when called onto the rear guard, by choosing to send 2 overlords from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck, 2 different abilities are activated depending on how many you send back. If 1 or more cards were sent back to the bottom of your deck, you can shuffle your deck. And if up to 2 cards were returned after shuffling, you can draw 1. So this first skill is great for slightly restocking your deck, mainly with the grade 3 Dragonic Overlords, and to also draw an extra card to possibly use later. And then the second skill of Doombringer High Flame. At the beginning of your ride phase, you can choose to retreat High Flame from your rear guard, and during that turn, you can stride a Overlord G unit without having to pay any hand cost. So High Flame is more or less a substitute stride fodder for the Overlord series. And now, the Great One, Twin Buckler Dragon. Like any other perfect guard in the game, his skill is mainly when you use him to guard, you can discard 1 card from your hand and completely block 1 opponent attack. But he also has the additional ability added to his perfect guard, which is more or less standard for all D standard perfect guards. That extra ability is, when used to guard, if you have less than 2 cards in your hand, you will not have to pay the usual discard 1 cost to do a perfect guard, which is great in desperate situations. And with that, we've just about covered it for the Grade 1 lineup. Next, let's go to the Grade 2 lineup. Next, the Grade 2 lineup. For the Grade 2s in this deck, we have 4 Ignoroad Dragons, 3 Torrid Cannon Dragons, 3 Flare Strike Dragons, and 2 Wyvern Strike Decats. The Grade 2, Ignoroad Dragon, a great support card for Dragonic Overlord to cross. For his skills are, the first skill, as a Vanguard or a Rear Guard, when ridden or called, you may check the top 7 cards of your deck for Dragonic Overlord to cross. If the cross is revealed by this skill, you may add it to your hand. So for this first skill, it's a good way to secure Dragonic Overlord to cross into your hand, ideally for riding as a grade 3, paying for stride costs, or for any other main cost that require you to take out a card from your hand that is specifically an Overlord. Then the second skill of Ignoroad Dragon, as a rear guard, whenever your Vanguard attacks, if you have 4 less cards in your hand, you may give Ignoroad Dragon plus 5,000 power till the end of the turn. So this second skill makes Ignoroad a good frontline attacker from your rear guard. Since Dragonic Overlords specialize in multiple attacks from your Vanguard, as long as you keep your hand size to 4 or less, you'll be able to stack power to Ignoroad by his own skill and have a decent attacker from your front row to support you with. The Grade 2, Torrid Cannon Dragon. His skill is, as a Vanguard or a Rear Guard, once per turn, you may counterblast 1 and send a normal unit from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck. If you've done so, you may retire one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rear guards, and after retiring, if you have 4 or less cards in your hand, you may draw 1 card. So this skill is great for returning cards to your deck slightly just to restock your deck with normal units you wish to use, or to clear out your opponent's field by retiring their rear guards. Also, as long as you've kept your hand size to 4 or less when using this skill, you'll be able to draw an extra card, which is quite helpful as well. The Grade 2, Flare Strike Dragon, a promo card from the Koro Koro Comic Monthly Magazine. His skill is, when called onto the rear guard by counterblasting 1, you can give your Vanguard plus 10,000 power till the end of the turn. So, as mentioned, this skill is quite simple but effective to use, since Upon calling, you'll be able to give your Vanguard extra power, which is great since this deck, Dragonic Overlord, specializes in multiple attacks from your Vanguard, so the more power you can stack to your Vanguard, the better, which is why Flare Strike Dragon is a pretty good card to have in either the D standard or the premium formats, by my opinion. And now, the Grade 2, Wyvern Strike the Cot, a support card for Dragonic Overlord the End from the V format. His skill is, as a rearguard, by choosing to counterblast one and moving the Cot from your rearguard to your soul, you may give your Dragonic Overlord the End on your field, either a Vanguard or a rearguard, a skill. That skill is, whenever the End attacks your opponent's Vanguard, if the opponent wishes to guard from their hand, they must guard with 2 or more. So, this skill is a great way to give your Dragonic Overlord the End an attack that will deal more pressure to your opponent by either making them have to discard more cards from their hand or making it more difficult for them to guard against the End if you use it as a Vanguard or a rearguard. So despite having only 9,000 power, which is slightly less than the average power that Grade 2s have in the V standard format, the Cot is still a pretty good support card to have in your deck if you play Dragonic Overlord the End. And with that, we've just about covered the Grade 2 lineup. Next, let's go to the Grade 3 lineup. Next, here we are in the Grade 3 lineup. For the Grade 3s in this deck, we have 2. Dragonic Overlord the Cross, G format. 2. Dragonic Overlord the Cross, V format. And 4. Dragonic Overlord the End, V format. The Grade 3, Dragonic Overlord the Cross, G format. One of the main Grade 3s to ride in this deck. His skills are, the first skill, Vanguard, Legion. For those of you who've kept up with Vanguard since the original series, you should know what Legion is. When both players' Vanguards are Grade 3 or higher, you may choose to send 5 cards from your drop zone to your deck, search your deck for your Vanguard's specific Legion mate, Legion it to your Vanguard, and then shuffle your deck. So, Legion is still a pretty good mechanic to use in the premium format, since it's a good way to restock your deck, refuel your deck with triggers, and Legion mates' powers are more or less added to your Vanguard, not to mention their skills are usable as a Vanguard since Legion mates are, put next to the Vanguard in the same circle. Then the second skill of the Cross G. Whenever your Vanguard performs Legion, you may search your deck for the same card as your Vanguard and add it to your hand. So this second skill will let you secure a specific Dragonic Overlord, like for example the Cross or the End, since you more or less add either of those 2 cards whenever your Vanguard Legions thanks to this second skill. And then the third skill of Overlord the Cross G. Whenever your Vanguard's attack fails to hit, you may counterblast 1, Persona Blast a Dragonic Overlord the Cross from your hand, choose up to 2 of your opponent's rear guards and retire them. So in the possible event that your Vanguard's attack fails to hit, simply by paying the cost of 1 counterblast and Persona Blasting the Cross from your hand, you can at least compensate by clearing out your opponent's field by wiping out their rear guards. So this third skill works well with the Vanguard's second skill, since like I mentioned before, the second skill is whenever you Legion, you'll be able to search your deck for either the Cross or the End and add it to your hand. So, more or less by choosing to add the Cross to your hand, you'll be able to secure the Persona Blast cost for this third skill. So overall, Overlord the Cross G, the Cross G format is still a great card to use in your premium format decks, thanks to all of its handy abilities like Legion, specific card adding, and Persona Blasting to clear rear guards. The Grade 3, Dragonic Overlord the Cross, V format, one of the other main Grade 3s to ride in this deck. His skills are, the first skill, as a Vanguard, once per turn, you may Soul Blast 1, Then search your deck for a card named Dragonic Overlord and add it to your Vanguard Soul. And then during your turn, the Overlord who was added to your Vanguard Soul will pass on his name and skills to your Vanguard for that turn. So for example, if you choose to use the Cross's skill to add the End to your Soul, the End's name and all of his skills will be added to your Vanguard for that turn. So this first skill is more or less a good way to give your Vanguard more possibilities by inheriting its name and skills. Then the second skill of Dragonic Overlord, the Cross V. Whenever one of your own card skills would count the number of cards in your hand, it will always be treated as 0. So if you use cards that count the number of cards in your hand, for example, like I previously mentioned, Ignorant Dragon, Turret Cannon Dragon, and Twin Buckler Dragon, any of your own card skills that would require to count how many cards in your hand, this second skill will treat your hand as 0 regardless of how many cards you are actually holding. Thus, you will not have to worry about how to hold on to or discard cards to make up for the required hand count. And then the third skill of the Cross V, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or higher, your Vanguard's drive check cannot be reduced to 0. So as long as you've fulfilled this condition, whenever, as you know, V standard format Dragonic Overlords always reduce your Vanguard's drive check whenever they restand. This third skill is more or less a way to secure to make sure your Vanguard's drive check will never go to below 1, so you'll always be able to drive check whenever your Vanguard restands and attacks. And now, the grade 3, Dragonic Overlord the End, V format. His skills are, as a Vanguard, after attacking, you may choose one of 2 abilities to activate as long as you can meet either of their requirements. After attacking, if you have 4 or less cards in your hand, you may Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, and then restand your Vanguard at the cost of reducing his drive check by 1. So this first skill is a more or less a basic restanding skill for Dragonic Overlords, as long as you've managed to keep up the have 4 or less cards in your hand condition. And then the second skill of Dragonic Overlord, the NV format. After attacking, if you have an Overlord in your soul, you may pay the cost of discarding 3 cards in your hand and reducing your Vanguard's drive check by 1. You may restand your Vanguard and give it plus 10,000 power till the end of the turn. So like the first skill, this second skill is a restanding ability for Dragonic Overlord, except as you have to discard 3 cards in your hand, but you get the bonus of plus 10,000 power. So one of the best parts of Dragonic Overlord, the NV format, is that as long as you meet both conditions, you can use both restanding skills in the same turn. Not to mention, he can be used as a Legion mate for either Dragonic Overlord, the Cross G, or to be used as a skill passed down to Dragonic Overlord, the Cross V format. So though he can be ridden as an actual grade 3 to your Vanguard in this deck, he's mainly meant to be used with either versions of Dragonic Overlord, the Cross. And with that, we've just about covered the grade 3 lineup. Next, let's go to the trigger lineup. And here we are in the deck's trigger lineup. For the triggers in this deck, we have 1. Dragon Deity of Resurgence, Drag Vita, over trigger. 4. Dragon Dancer Paloma, critical triggers. 4. Dragon Dancer Tiklas, critical triggers. 3. Flare Veil Dragons, draw triggers. And 4. Dragon Dancer Nastasia's, heal triggers. The grade 0, over trigger, Dragon Deity of Resurgence, Drag Vita. The D standard format's over trigger for the Dragon Empire Nation. His skill is, when revealed in a drive check or damage check, you may give one of your units 100 million power and draw a card. Like any other over trigger, this is a basic skill, and then the main ability of Dragvita, unique to him. When revealed in a drive check, you may stand your Vanguard. So, along with the incredibly massive power boost, this Overtrigger's second skill will also restand your Vanguard, which works well with Dragonic Overlords that specialize in restanding and multiple attacks from your Vanguard. The Grade 0, critical trigger, Dragon Dancer Paloma. Her skill is, when discarded from your hand to pay for the hand cost of striding, herself, she is treated as a Grade 3 during that time. So Paloma is more or less a stride fodder for the Kagero clans, G standard and premium format. So even though she's only a Grade 0, she can still be used to pay for stride costs all by herself thanks to her own skill. The Grade 0, critical trigger, Dragon Dancer Tikla. Her skill is, as a rearguard, Generation Break 1, whenever your Vanguard attacks, you may choose to move Tikla from your rearguard to the soul, draw one card, and give your Vanguard plus 10,000 power till the end of the battle. So Tikla's skill is used to restock your soul, your hand, and to give your Vanguard a boost of 10,000 power during that attack. So overall, she's, like I mentioned, she's a good way to restock your soul, restock your hand with the two requirements of her skill, and to give your Vanguard a major power boost. The Grade 0, draw trigger, Flare Veil Dragon. His skill is, when used to guard, if your opponent's Vanguard is a Grade 3, you may give your shield plus 5,000 shield. So a D standard format draw trigger, his skill, like I mentioned, like I was supposed to mention, when used to guard, if both players' Vanguards are Grade 3, he gets plus 5,000 shield. So unlike most draw triggers who only give you 5,000 shield, this skill will give him a slightly better advantage defensively. So it's a good card to have. Despite only having 3 of this, it's still usable in the premium format. And now, the Grade 3, Heal Trigger, Heal Guardian, Dragon Dancer Nastasha. Her skill is, when used to guard, if you have not yet ridden to Grade 3, you may choose one of 2 effects. The first effect, you may give your Vanguard plus 10,000 power till the end of the turn. So this first effect of the skill is mainly used to stop your opponent from rushing you too early by having a number of attacks to barrage your Grade 2 or less Vanguard. And then the second effect of the skill, the attacking unit gets -2 critical. So like the first skill, it's mainly used to stop your opponent from pushing you to too much damage before you get the chance to ride to Grade 3, except instead of stopping a barrage of many attacks, it's meant to weaken a larger attack by reducing its critical. And then the second skill of Nastasha, when called onto the rear guard, if you have no cards in your damage zone, you may place the top card of your deck face up onto your damage zone. So this second skill is mainly used to stop opponents from performing the damage denial strategy on you. The damage denial strategy is where an opponent prevents you from being able to use any counterblast too soon by avoiding attacking your Vanguard early so that you won't be able to use any skills whenever you have the chance to ride or call. So thanks to these Heal Guardians, when called to the rear guard, they can more or less stop the annoyance of the damage denial strategy. And with that, we've just about covered the trigger lineup. For the trigger line of this deck, we use 1 over trigger, 8 critical triggers, draw triggers 3, and 4 heal triggers. And with that, we've just about covered the trigger lineup and the main deck. Next, let's cover the G zone. And now, we cover the G zone. For the G zone, let's start with the G units. For the G units in this deck, we have 2 Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Dragonic Overlord the Purge, 3 Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Dragonic Overlord the Ace, and Then 2, Flare General, Dumjit Valor. Next we have 3, Flare Arms, Ziegenbert. 1, Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Zanbus Dragon. And 1, Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Extengrave Dragon. The Grade 4, G Unit, Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Dragonic Overlord the Purge. His skills are, the first skill, as a Vanguard, once per turn, by flipping one card in your G zone face up and taking an Overlord from your hand and putting into your Vanguard soul. If you have paid the set cost, if your opponent has 4 or less cards in their damage zone, you may deal 1 damage to your opponent's Vanguard, and the damage dealt by this unit's skill cannot use any trigger effects. So for this first skill, it's a good way to increase your face-up G-Zone cards, stock up your souls, and then deal damage to your opponent. And the best part, since the damage dealt by this skill cannot use trigger effects, your attacks will still have a decent chance of hitting. And then the second skill of the Purge, as a Vanguard, Generation Break 3. Your Vanguard's drive check becomes the same number of the cards in your opponent's damage zone. So as long as you've managed to push your opponent to 5 damage, either by your previous turn's attacks or by this unit's first skill, you'll be able to drive check 5 cards, which is a good way to either increase your chances of getting a trigger during your attack's drive check or to restock your hand with 5 new cards. So overall, the Purge is a good offensive card, but also a good defensive card thanks to his 2 skills. The Grade 4, G Unit, Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Dragonic Overlord the Ace. His skill is, as a Vanguard, by counterblasting 2, flipping 1 the Ace from your G zone face up, and reducing your Vanguard's drive check by 1, your Vanguard gets a skill. The skill is, as a Vanguard, once per turn, after attacking, by discarding 1 card from your hand and an Overlord from your hand, you may restand your Vanguard, and it gets plus 5,000 power till the end of the turn. So this skill is more or less a usual standing skill for the Dragonic Overlord series. As long as you don't mind reducing your Vanguard's drive check, you can attack twice from your G unit. And the best part about the Ace is his skill is, in a way, stackable. As long as you can additionally pay another 2 counterblast and flip another the Ace from your hand and have extra cards in your hand to discard, along with another Overlord to discard, you can restand your Vanguard multiple times, and according to how many times you can pay for the skill, as long as you don't mind reducing your drive check by 1 for each time you pay for the cost of the skill. So overall, the Ace is still a good card for pressuring your opponents with multiple Vanguard attacks. The Grade 4, G Unit, Flare General, Dumjit Valor. His skills are, the first skill, Blaze. The Blaze ability is, whenever your Vanguard or Rearguard attacks, if you have more Rearguards than your opponent, your Vanguard enters the blazing state. The second skill of Dumjit Valor, by counterblasting 1 and flipping 1 card in your G zone face up, your Vanguard gets plus 15,000 power for every Sentinel in your drop zone. So as this second skill, as long as you pay the minor cost, you'll be able to stack huge amounts of power onto your Vanguard Dumjit Valor, as long as you've managed to secure a number of Sentinels in your drop zone, either Perfect Guards, critical Sentinels, or Quintet Walls. So this second skill is a pretty good skill. In best part, it's only a small cost to pay. Then the third skill of Dumjit Valor, as a Vanguard, once per turn, after attacking, if your Vanguard is in the blazing state and if your opponent has already used a G Guardian or Sentinel during your turn, you may stand your Vanguard at the cost of reducing your Vanguard's drive check by 1. So as for this third skill, it's another restanding skill to attack if your Vanguard multiple times, as long as you've managed to enter your Vanguard Dumjit Valor into the blazing state, and if your opponent was pressured into using a G Guardian or Perfect Guard or any other kind of Sentinel, you can restand your Vanguard Dumjit Valor by minusing his own drive check. The Grade 4 G unit, Flare Arms, Ziegenberg. His skills are, as a Vanguard, Blaze. I already explained the blazing ability with Dumbjet Valor, so I wanted to explain it again. Then we go to the second skill of Flare Arms Ziegenberg. As a Vanguard, once per turn, by Soul Blasting 1 and flipping a Ziegenberg from your G zone face up, you may retire one of your opponent's rear guards. So for this second skill, it's a decent basic skill for the Kagero clan. Simply by Soul Blasting 1 and flipping a Ziegenberg face up, you can clear out your opponent's rear guards by 1, which is okay overall. And then the third skill of Flare Arms Ziegenberg, as a Vanguard, once per turn, Generation Break 3. After attacking, you may Counterblast 1 and discard the number of cards from your hand as the same as the amount of rear guards your opponent has. Then you may restand your Vanguard at the additional cost of reducing your Vanguard's drive check by 2. So again, it's another restanding skill for your Vanguard. And the best part about Ziegenberg is his cost is adjustable. For, as I mentioned, for his cost, after attacking by Counterblasting 1 and discarding the same number of cards from your hand as your opponent's rear guards, you may restand. So if you've managed to use your skills or attacks to clear out your opponent's rear guards, like for example, if your opponent has no more rear guards, the hand discard cost for Ziegenberg can be reduced to 0. And so overall, Ziegenberg is a good way to pressure your opponents with multiple attacks and to save your hand for later defense. The Grade 4 Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Zanbus Dragon. His skill is, as a Vanguard, once per turn, by flipping 1 card in your G zone face up, you may retire all of your opponent's rear guards, and then all Grade 3 or higher units on your front row will get plus 10,000 power till the end of the turn. So Zanbus Dragon's skill is pretty simple to use and very effective if you wish to clear out your opponent's field of all rear guards and to make your actual attacks from your Vanguard and front row Grade 3 or higher units to attack during your battle phase. So Zanbus Dragon, great card to have, even if it's not the main G unit to use. And then the Grade 4 G unit, Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Exengrave Dragon. His skills are, the first skill, Blaze. Like I said before, I already explained Blaze with Dumbjet Valor, so I won't have to explain it again. Then let's just get on to the second skill of Exengrave. As a Vanguard, once per turn, by Counterblasting 1 and flipping 1 card in your G zone face up, your Vanguard gets a skill. The skill is, when attacking, if your Vanguard is already in the blazing state, you may draw 1 card and retire an opponent's rear guard. So kind of like with Zanbus Dragon, this G unit skill is a pretty basic one for Kageros. As long as you pay the cost, you can and fulfill the requirements, you can clear out your opponent's rear guard just by a little bit and increase your hand size even just by a little. So overall, Exengrave is another alternative to Stride as your first G unit. And with that, I've just about covered all the G units. So next, let's go to the G Guardians. And next, let's cover the G Guardians. For the G Guardians in this deck, we have 1. Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Defeat Flare Dragon. 2. Flamewing Steel Beast, Denial Griffin. And 1. Divine Dragon Knight, Absalam. The Grade 4, G Guardian, Supreme Heavenly Emperor Dragon, Defeat Flare Dragon. A G Guardian mainly used to be used with Overlords. For his skill is, when used to guard, by Counterblasting 1 and sending 2 Grade 3 Flame Dragons from your drop zone to the bottom of your deck. If the cost has been paid, then you may retire all of the rear guards in your opponent's back row. So this skill is mainly used to clear out your opponent's field of rear guards, mainly the back row ones, so that your opponent's remaining attacks won't have any boosters from the back row to add their power. The Grade 4, G Guardian, Flamewing Steel Beast, Denial Griffin. His skill is, when used to guard against a rear guard attack, you may counterblast one and retire the attacking unit. So basically, this G Guardian is more or less a pseudo-perfect guard for rear guard attacks, which is a pretty good way to clear out the opponent's field and to cancel any rear guard attacks that manage to accumulate high levels of power and critical. And next, the Grade 4, G Guardian, Divine Dragon Knight, Absalam. His skill is, when used to guard, you may counterblast one, and then give your guarding Absalam plus 10,000 shield for every empty rear guard circle in your opponent's field. So, if you've managed to clear out the number of rear guards in your opponent's field beforehand, this skill will allow him to gain 10,000 shield for each empty circle. So, on his own, he'll be a great defensive card as long as you've managed to get the conditions right. So overall, a good G Guardian. And with that, we've just about covered the G Guardians and the G Zone. And I've just about explained all the cards in the main deck in G Zone, so let's just next we cover the main way to play in this deck. Mainly to play this deck, when you ride to your Grade 3 Vanguard, you either have to ride Dragonic Overlord the Cross V or Dragonic Overlord the Cross G. If you choose to play Dragonic Overlord the Cross V, the main strategy is to use his skill to inherit Dragonic Overlord the end, and then use additional abilities from perhaps support cards I use in this deck: Calamity Tower Wyvern, Ignorant Dragon, Wyvern Strike to cut, and Flare Strike Dragon to make the ends twin restanding and 3-time attacks in the turn more devastating for your opponent. Or if you choose to ride Dragonic Overlord the Cross G, the strategy is more or less the same, except you choose to Legion Dragonic Overlord the end in the attempt, and then using the similar support cards to increase the chances of your Vanguard's attacks hitting. So the strategies for this deck is mainly more or less the same. Choose to ride either Dragonic Overlord the Cross G or V. Use their skills to work together with Dragonic Overlord at the end, and then use other support cards to make your multiple Vanguard attacks much more devastating. Also, this deck has defensive abilities if you've chosen to ride Dragonic Overlord the Cross V, since his second skill treats your hand as 0 at all times when your own card skills count your hand. It works well with the Perfect Guard, Twin Buckler Dragon, who lets you use a no-cost Perfect Guard as long as you have less than 2 cards in hand, which works well with the Cross V's treat your hand as 0 at all times skill. So, like I mentioned before, the main way to use this deck, ride either the Cross V or the Cross G, cooperate with Dragonic Overlord the end, and make your Vanguard's multiple attacks much more powerful and much more devastating with support cards added in this deck. And we've just about covered the main way to play this deck, so overall I'm done, finished explaining the deck build and the main way to play this deck. So first off, I want to say thank you to the viewers for watching today's video, and to stay tuned for any more videos I plan to upload again in the near future. I also hope you all show your support by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing to my videos and channel. And with that, I say goodbye and see you all soon.